Hello and welcome. My name is David Ridgway. Welcome to Kirklees Local TV's weekly wind-up. This is where we bring you a digest of the weekly news. We aim to be informative, interesting, amusing and provocative. We'll be discussing two topics this week: the Colne Valley Museum and Scouting Today. To help us find out more about these matters, I'm delighted to introduce you to Janet Jobber, an old friend of mine, who is a trustee of the Colne Valley Museum, and Chris Storey, a new friend of mine, who is a commissioner with the local Scouts.
Hi.
But as always, we want feedback from you. The weekly wind-up can be found on email at info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, and you can search on Twitter at the weekly wind-up. So Janet, can you tell us something about the history of the Colne Valley Museum?
Well, I'll try to say it in as few words as I can because it's a long history going back 45 years.
Wow.
When, in 1970, the old Socialist Club on Cliff Ash was moving premises, and they offered their old cottage at number 28 Cliff Ash to a group of volunteers who were wanting to set up a living history museum for the textile industry. They're weavers' cottages, and they wanted to preserve that heritage. Over the years, we've acquired two more cottages quite quickly, and then more recently, we've acquired the fourth cottage and an old shop, which people may remember as the old chip shop at Cliff Ash, and was originally built in 1903 as a butcher's shop. We've worked from then, trying to keep the museum alive and changing and up to date. So that's in a potted history.
And you all wear funny clothes, don't you?
Well, we wear clothes that people would have worn at the time. And I think that's what helps to bring it to life. We were actually at the forefront of what that now is called the living history movement. And we think it's important that people can walk into a building and see people dressed as our forebears were and doing the sort of things that they did. Now,
tell me, do you charge an entrance fee?
We do. It's very small, off the top of my head, and this is awful for a trustee, but I think it's £2.50 for adults. Children up to 16 are admitted free, so it's very reasonable.
Of course, children up to 16 would normally be the people working there in years gone by.
Well, the whole families work there, because the children, before they had to go to school, which was late in the 19th century, they would be involved in carding wool. The women would be spinning and the men would be weaving and producing cloth in the loom chambers at the top of the house.
So this is what we were talking about is cottage industries rather than the big mills.
Yes, it's quite interesting because the museum is really at the changeover between domestic textile production and the mills. The mills were actually working in the 1840s when the cottages started to be built.
Of course.
So we think they may well be the last weavers' cottages to be built. They're certainly very late.
Well, that's interesting. Didn't know that. And presumably, when the big mills came in and they started to turn a profit and so on and so forth, they would have been built by people who had been working in the cottages, presumably? Some of them would have been, I would imagine, yes. Yeah. Right, now then, where do you get your money from?
Anywhere that we can is the simple answer to that. No, we don't have a regular income from anybody. We raise our money, obviously, from admission charges, from fundraising events, and if it's something big and special, then we apply to grant awarding bodies as a charity. Right,
I understand you just received quite a lot of money from the lottery.
Yes.
In order to get your cottages.
Well, it's a little bit more than that. It's an extremely generous grant which we've had to work very hard to get. And it will enable us to make some physical changes to the building. And at the end of the day, number 28, the original cottage, will actually be presented as it was when it was built, with a living room, a bedroom and the loom chamber on top. There will be other changes in the building, but they're a bit complicated and you need to look at it to see them.
Can you imagine the people who first worked in that cottage thinking that their successors, if I can call you such, would receive lottery funding of £719,000 for a cottage which was probably built for what, 150 quid?
I would think so.
Talk about inflation.
Well, it is a bit staggering, but a lot of the money will actually go to help us expand our activities.
Indeed.
For example, we want to put some of our collection, the paper collection and the vast photographic collection that we have, into a digital format so that people can access it more easily without having to rummage through storage boxes and so on.
I've always been fascinated by the walking back into a time gone by. In some respects, a simpler time. In some respects, a more ordered time. But in some respects, a pretty tough time.
Yes, very different time, very physical work. We have a lot of school parties who come to the museum as part of their primary school children mainly.
Yeah.
And they come and live their lives as Victorian children for the day. And they dress up. And it's quite interesting to sit in the cottage at the end waiting for them to come, because you can hear their voices chattering as they come down Cliff Ash. And the routine is that they knock on the door, and this rather forbidding lady...
You?
No. Susan Starr, who's our main school coordinator, opens the door and says, "Yes, what do you want?" And the story is usually that the wheels fallen off their cart and they have to wait, and can they come into the house where it's warm? Can you work? Yes. Have you got some food? Yes. Right, well, you can come in then. And as they walk into the room, the chatter just dies away and they just stand open-mouthed looking round at what the room looks like compared to their own kitchen or living room at home.
Yeah. Now, you and I are quite well versed with weavers' cottages because they're dotted all over the Colne Valley and indeed wider afield. And these are the cottages which have got the windows at the top, which are, I suppose, about 18 inches wide.
Yes.
With a stone mullion.
Yes.
And then 18 inches, stone mullion and so on, and they go all the way along the length to get as much light in as they could. And I suspect there are a lot of people who live locally who have no idea why they're like that at all.
Well, I hope they do now that we've been working at it for 45 years.
That's good. Okay, well, you've got to do it more.
Well, that's what we plan to do. We'd like to think that we will be there for another 45 years. That's the idea of the lottery money that we've been granted. The project is called Sustaining the Dream because it's always been the dream of volunteers to own all of the cottages, which we now do. Yep. And now we have to keep that going.
Some people say to me, I hate history. I've no interest in history. And what's the relevance of history? It's all happened, it's gone, it's dead, it's dusty, it's finished. What is the relevance of museums today?
I think if I speak personally, I've always had an interest in the past. And for me, if you don't know where you've come from, how do you know where you're going? I think it's important to know how we got to where we are now. And if we can show people just a little way back, I mean, 3 of my 4 grandparents were Victorians. And so they were able to talk to me about their childhood, which is and their parents and their grandparents, and that fits in with the sort of things that we're doing at the museum. So if you bring the past to life, people can understand where we are now, and I think that's very important.
Okay. What's your connection with the Freemasons?
The Freemasons?
Yeah.
They very kindly, out of their Queen's Jubilee Fund, gave us a grant, and that helped us to fit out the new tea room, which is in the last cottage that we bought. And we now have a splendid tea room and shop, which is the entrance to the museum now.
Now, you must get the Provincial Grand Master to come down and have a look round.
They came actually to the opening ceremony that we had last February.
All right, okay.
Together with the Lord Lieutenant, who was a wonderful lady, and we had a super afternoon, and we really all enjoyed it.
Good. The Colne Valley Museum is a gem in the Colne Valley. We've all seen signs for things like it's the hidden secret of West Yorkshire, it's the hidden secret of the consols, and I've never really understood why that is a beneficial advertising slogan, because the Colne Valley Museum, it's not a secret, it's there, it's welcoming, and it's available for you. Thank you very much for taking us.
Thank you for inviting me.
That's okay. But we want to hear from you. You can always contact us on email at info@kirkleeslocaltv.com and search for us on Twitter at Weekly Windup. We're now going to take a break. Thank you very much.
However large or small your business, attracting new customers requires dedication and a lot of patience. Just like fishing, but you also need the right gear. Rods,
reels, lines, hooks, sinkers, lures, tackle box, tackle bag, net, bait, gas gloves, clothes, pocket knife, lunch.
Or you could simply advertise with KLTV. Online, grow your business and your clientele. KLTV, your vision made reality. Should have gone to KLTV.
Welcome back. Now, Chris, before I come to you, I just want to mention that the New Mill Club has been doing some work with regard to the centenary of the First World War, and they're calling friends and relatives of New Mill's Great War heroes to an exhibition called Photos on the Wall. And this will be on April the 1st, 2015 at 7 p.m. And I encourage you to go because it is fascinating stuff. So, Chris, you're a scout. I used to be a scout. I can tell you that when I was initiated into scouting,
yes.
The last thing I remember of my initiation was a young fellow who became a very good friend jumping on my head before I passed out. I was then put into the back of the headmaster's car to be taken home, and I was sick all over his carpet in the well. Is scouting still like that?
I hope not. I believe we have lots of fun, and know that's the case, but I hope such things don't really happen, particularly the sickness.
Okay, now you go back to the Boer War.
As many people know, Baden-Powell started scouting what is now over 100 years ago, nearly coming up to 110. And he came back and he saw that there had been young people out in the war who were doing bits and bobs, helping, scouting as it was referred to, and he thought that through the things he'd seen there he could help the general people, the general populace to grow. Not necessarily make them part of the military, which is certainly not what he intended, but just to make them better people, make them better citizens, which is something we continue to do now.
Okay. So why has there been such a rebirth of scouting in the 2010s?
Well, I think there's two things going on. One is that the population changes, as we know, and you know we have increases, decreases in population. And in the 70s there was a massive population boom, and that sort of dwindled away and came back again. So naturally you're going to see more people. But equally we changed the way that we think of scouting somewhat, and we've hopefully over the last 10 years or so made it more relevant to young people today.
Well, that would explain why the actual growth is much greater than just the increase in population.
Yeah.
The scouting movement is seen as an activity for white middle-class kids.
I believe by some.
Is it fair?
I think it was probably more fair if you went back 10 or 15 years ago. It's never ever been intended to be that. We are open to anyone that wants to join. I think what we're now realising is that our demographic profile might not be that of society around us. So we need to make better efforts in some areas, and that's what we're doing.
Are you making efforts in our Muslim communities here in Kirklees?
So if you actually analyse scouting within the area that I cover, which is Colne Valley, Crossland Moor, Netherton, and Newsham, the areas of major Muslim areas don't particularly have any scouting, and those are the areas that we're now targeting.
Okay, and how is your targeting going?
We're at quite early stages with that. I've recently taken over, and it's just starting to get into that planning now. But we know where we want to aim at. We've got some people who are willing to work with us. It's just now, finishing off the job, as it were.
Why do you think it's right for a young lad to come and enjoy the scouting movement today, what benefits is he going to get?
Every section that we have has what's called a top award, and that top award, I think, in my mind, is a key to opening doors.
Okay.
It's been seen by many as, you know, if I had two people's CVs there on the desk, and one person has the top award, which one would you go to? It's not a GCSE, but it's that bigger, more well-rounded, let's call it a qualification that shows that you've got those underlying skills of teamwork, that you're willing to challenge yourself, all of those things.
So you will make the comment to me, this is now me putting words into your mouth, which is very naughty, that if you come into the scouting movement, there will be benefits which will be instilled into that person's character for the long term?
Very much, yeah. We stretch people, and that must be character building.
I remember doing Bob a Job. Do you still do Bob a Job today? Is it quid a job? £5 quid a job?
Only. So there was a period of time after what was referred to as Scout Job Week. Now, after a number of years of not having anything, it's come back in the last three or four years, and it's now been called Scout Community Week. And for a number of years, it was sponsored by B&Q, and they would provide all sorts of stuff off their shelves that was going out of date, etc.
Like my shower.
And those would then be put to good use. That's continuing this year, and it's in October, and hopefully there'll be lots of young people out in their community, but taking part in projects that they want to take part in to make a change for their community, rather than just things that the adults want to do.
Do you still get involved with woodcraft and outdoor activities and learning how? Well, you do, because Bear Grylls is on the telly though, telling us how to do it, but he's doing it rather exotically somewhere, somewhere warm.
He is quite a good success as an advertising campaign for us. Some of the things he does on the telly is very way out, but you know, we are still underpinned by adventure. Young people doing adventurous things that challenge them, and yes, camping, all those things are very, very much at the core of what we do.
The reintroduction of the word respect into society.
Oh, respect is a core value, yeah.
Absolutely. I know that your scouting movement in Slathwaite particularly is under pressure.
Yeah.
For room at the moment.
I think it's any community facility, a lot of them these days are full.
Take advantage of what's going on in local government.
Yes, we
is
will.
The only advice I'm giving you. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
I found that really interesting talking to you both about various bits and bobs.
Thank you.
But as always, we want to hear from you. You can always contact us by email on info@kirkleeslocaltv.com and search on Twitter @Weekly Windup. Thank you very much.